to get in. All right. How many people have been to San Francisco and seen the Victorians?
I have.
Yep.
I have. It's been a while, but
Oh, yeah, right.
They're
yeah.
still standing. They've been here a long time.
so the homeless haven't taken them over yet, huh?
No. All right. All righty. Let's see. I got to answer the chat. All right. I'm good to go. All right, everyone. I want to welcome everyone to get set up. We're seniors teaching seniors about technology, and we have all of other types of programming for you to enjoy. Today's class is just a fun one here. We're just going to talk about the Painted Ladies, or we're going to do a virtual tour of the Victorians of San Francisco. My name is Donna. I'm your guide today. I was in the IT industry for over 30 years. I enjoy helping people get over their fears of technology. And this session is being recorded. If you wish to have a copy of the recording, you can do so by emailing help@getsetup.io. And we're not paid to promote anything in this class, although I'm not, I don't know, not really promoting any products. We're just showing a lot of old stuff. So today we're going to learn about the different styles of Victorians, some of the architectural features of these styles, and we're going to explore some of San Francisco's famous painted ladies. All right. And I just asked if people have been to San Francisco and seen these houses. They're all over the place. You can't escape the Victorians. So when we talk about looking at the Victorians here, there was a book in 1978. It was written by Elizabeth Pomada and Michael Larson. It was called Painted Ladies, San Francisco's Resplendent Victorians. And after that time, the title kind of stuck. They started calling these Grand Victorians Painted Ladies. Now, when we talk about the Victorian architecture, we're talking about a period of time, 1830 to 1910. Kind of aligns in the time of Queen Victoria of England, her reign. She had a 63-year reign in England, and she died around 1901. So around that time, that's when they say it was the end of the Victorian period, which was followed by the Edwardian period. In this, and we're talking about architecture, of course. To give you a little shot, there's Coit Tower up there on the hill. So these Victorians really came about when the gold rush hit San Francisco in 1848. Only 1,000 people lived in San Francisco at that point, just 1,000. And then the gold rush hit, and literally everyone came from all over the world. I mean, everyone came here. And the population shot right up. So about 48,000 homes, Victorian homes, were built between 1849 and 1915. By the way, by 1900, the population of San Francisco was about 350,000 people. So that's quite a population growth in just 50 years. So these, unfortunately, we had the 1906 earthquake. And a lot of these massive homes were destroyed, especially the downtown area was just in flames from the fires. But the houses on the western and southern sides of the city, those have survived. So when we look at, here's a nice example of Queen Anne's. These three here are Queen Anne style. And then we have the Italianate, which we're going to talk about a little bit. Now, these homes, when we were talking about these painted ladies, these are large homes, 2 to 3 stories tall. If they had been out in the countryside, they would have wraparound porches, but they tailored a lot of this architecture for city living. When they were building them, they built these row houses so that they could accommodate the fast-growing population that was happening. So they have very asymmetrical shapes at times, steep roofs, especially the Queen Anne's, the roofs are very steep. And they can have very decorative trim and very bright colors. So let's take a look at the main styles. When we talk about these Victorians, there was the Gothic Revival, 1840 to 1880, the Italianate, 1850 to 1890, kind of falls in between the Queen Anne. So looking at the dates, 1850, this style, this Italianate is really heavy here in San Francisco because a lot of people were here from Italy and Europe, and they started building a lot of these buildings because there was just this demand for the population. And then the Queen Anne's came about in the 1870s. They came a little later. And then we have the different styles. Shingle. Some of these houses started having the brown shingle put on them. You'll see some of those in the city. Stick, the stick style, which means having decorative planks put attached to the sides and the fronts of the buildings with decorations on them that serve no structural, purpose to them. And Eastlake, which is a style they had these kits that you could buy where you could stick all these little figures and designs that had been created on the lathe or a jigsaw, and you could stick it. And so these houses were very colorful, had a lot going on. If they were in the countryside, they would have a porch, very colorful porches and that type of thing. And then we had octagons. That was another one. The octagons were in the 1850s. So we had some of those. So if we look at some of the styles here, let me bring out my slide here just to show you.
What about commercials?
This is an example here of a Gothic revival, but in a high-rise, which is kind of interesting. The Gothic, when you think of Gothic, you think of haunted house. This is called a Carpenter Gothic. Because Gothic styles, a lot of the architecture at that time it was done in stone, and then these type of houses they called them carpenter because they were done in wood. But you can see the spirals, and it always looks like a haunted house to me. This is the Italianate style, which is we're going to see a lot of today. The overhanging eaves. We've got the brackets below the eaves. They have flat roofs. The different Italianates, some had flat fronts, and then some had bay windows. They started doing the bay windows later on in the later 1800s to give an illusion of space. So this is a house here in the city, the Sylvester House. You can see the Italianate structure here. And that's a flat front. And then this is an Italianate with the bay windows. So again, overhanging eaves, the decorative brackets, and the bay window. As the houses got closer and closer, they did the bay windows just to, a couple extra feet, but it gave the illusion that there was more room in the house. So that was why they did that. And then this is the stick style, where you have these decorative little sticks. You can see them over here on the frame, where they just tacked on just these decorative little sticks of planks, just added it there. They don't have a structural purpose to them. And then this one's a famous house. This is This is what they call Eastlake. We're going to see this house a little later too. A lot of ornamentation on these type of houses. And in California, they kind of call all the stick houses and the Eastlake, they just call them Stick Eastlake because there's so many of them. They just put them that way. And the Eastlake, it comes from an architect. His name was Charles Eastlake, and he actually made furniture. And some people in the architectural world, they don't consider this a style. They just say that it's not really an architectural style. It's just, a look that you've added to an Italianate. So there's, some little controversy there, but you do see these type of houses here. And then, of course, the Queen Anne's, 1880 to 1910. very famous style here in the city. All right. So let's take a look over here. Get back to my slides. So when we're looking at these styles, in San Francisco, we're going to see the Italianate. This is a lot of these. These are very, they have a false front. You can see off to the side that the roof is over here. So towards the later part of the 1800s, you see this. It kind of goes into the Edwardian architecture style, having this false front. But again, you have the overhanging eaves, the brackets, all lined up like this. The other style, of course, is the stick Eastlake. Heavily ornamentation. Again, these were all little pieces of wood that were attached to the house to make it this way. You can see the lathe work done here on the banister. Very pretty.
Mhm.
And then, of course, the Queen Anne's. Massive Queen Anne's here in San Francisco, some of the older ones, like this one here, just a quaint little cottage. This would be called a turreted Queen Anne because it has a turret right here. You have the tower. So these were very special. In its day, when people started getting gold, there were two types of people in San Francisco. There were the people that struck it rich with gold, right? And they had to show off. They had to make these massive homes just to show off the wealth that they had, right, to everyone else. And then there were the people that sold all the shovels, right? They made some good money, like Levi's. They had sold all the jeans for all those people to go, wear their jeans out to the find their gold. So definitely, this is very common. Unfortunately, they had really, really large Victorians in downtown San Francisco, but unfortunately, they got destroyed. But if you ever see old pictures of San Francisco, and you'll see some of these massive, mansions that they had downtown. They were really something else. Now, the most famous that for San Francisco is what we call Postcard Row. And you probably recognize these ladies. They're also called the Seven Sisters. Most famous row of Victorians in the city. They're on all those postcards. These houses were built 1892 to 1896 by a developer named Matthew Cavanaugh. He lived in the oldest one, which was the biggest one at the bottom here. This one's at address 722. All these were built in the 1890s, and they were pretty plain looking, though. They actually didn't get the coloring, all the beautiful colors on them, until the 1960s. In 1960, there was this wave of people decided that they wanted to start giving these Victorians some crazy color schemes and everything. So that really just became popular in the 60s. Some Victorians did get crazy color schemes back in the 1880s and 90s. But not all of them. Some of them were just painted white. So it really depended on who did the house. But there was definitely a wave of painting done in the 60s for these houses. And just to let you know, this one here is 720. Alice Walker lived here, the Color Purple author.
Oh.
She lived in this house. Apparently, they say there were a lot of complaints about loud music. This house here, this is 2012, just to show, because people always ask about how much are these. Okay, I'm gonna let you know the last sales of these houses. This one here, in 2012 for 2.38 million. This the one that Alice used to live in 2001, it sold for 1.2 million. And 12, which is this one here, sold for 1998 for 920,000. So that was a bargain back then, I guess. And we had one sell just last year. Can you believe it? During the pandemic. 14, which would be this one here. This one sold in 2020 for 3.55 million. And 722, this one at the very bottom, the big one, this one sold in 2014 for 3.1 million. So those were the last sales. These houses here have been held by families for a long time. They have not moved at all. I believe one of them is a Airbnb too. So let's take a little look here at the houses. We come down into this neighborhood. Let's take a little look at it. So get up close and see these houses. And here they are. They have bright sun on them. You can't really see the colors too much, but you can see the detail in these houses. They're opposite a big park. And the place to get the famous picture, you have to come down here, hang a right. You have to get up next to the top, almost the top of the hill of this park. And you'll see everyone standing right here.
Donna,
Yeah.
Chris is asking, is there a reason why the first floor is raised?
Oh, good question. They're on a hill. They're on hill. A lot of times these houses were built, they just put them right on. There's no basement on them or anything. And they were just on the hill part. And then they would just put the stairs going up. Later on in the 1920s, when people had cars, they started digging into the hills and putting in garages in a lot of the Victorians. So they call them altered Victorians if they had a garage put in. And in San Francisco, if you have a historical building, they will allow, they'll be strict on how you paint them, any changes you make to the house. But the one thing they will let you do is put a garage in. So they will waive that. So this is the famous picture, of course, of the painted ladies, San Francisco, the downtown in the background. And this park, I think they finished it by now, but they've been doing a lot of restoration on that park. This park, by the way, this is Alamo Square, and this is Alamo Park. When the 1906, when the downtown was completely in flames, people rushed to this park. They had to just, sleep out under the stars because there was, nowhere else to go until they started building these really tiny little houses out in this part of the neighborhood and beyond. They were little cottages, one room houses. They were called earthquake houses. There's not too many of them left in the city anymore, but they were cute. They were these tiny little places, and that's what they were just built for just some type of housing. Here's some more pretty Queen Anne's. These have been updated, but they kept the turret. When they do updates in the neighborhoods, they do try to keep the style of the Queen Anne's. Like this one's really modern, but you can see they left a little bit of an homage to the turret. And these over here are much older. You can see them. And there's companies that do the painting. Look at this detail in this house here. The Victorians could have anywhere from 4 to 16 colors on them. So there's special companies that will do paint jobs to keep, there's a lot of upkeep to keep this, looking this way. So it's very, and this one's obviously been redone, this whole house, but they still gave it a modern look, but at the same time, they kept that Queen Anne style. And you will see that throughout the city. Now, coming over around the corner here, this house, quite an interesting look, huh? This is the William Westerfield house. And this has had a sordid past in the city. It was built in 1889. Cost $9,985 to build. And this house has had former like jazz musicians have lived here, hippies have lived here. Bobby Beausoleil. Does anybody remember who Bobby Beausoleil is?
Nope.
Oh, he was part of the Manson family. He lived here, and apparently Charles has been to that house. So we had that. They had some satanic group live there, and they did all these satanic rituals in the tower of the house. So yeah, this house has had quite a little history here. So let's take a look at it a little bit more. I'll show you some more pictures of this house. Let me show some pictures of the inside. It's really it has such an ominous look to it, but it's really quite a beautiful house. And it is, we were talking about that, it's a stick Italianate, okay? Because it's got, again, the overhanging eaves, right? It has the sticks, all the decorative sticks are all around the house. Here's where you can see, this is a good example of the sticks I was talking about. See this here?
Mm-hmm.
The trim, all the trim that they put on, that's what the stick is about. And it's an Eastlake. It's got all the little squares and all the stuff that they attach to it. But it's an Italianate villa. So it's an Italianate, but they call it a villa because it's got the tower. The tower on top makes it a villa. You don't see too many of those in the city. Most of them just have a flat roof. But in Italy, when they made the, I don't know why the guy on the motorcycle sitting there. But yeah, so in Italy, when the Italian people were here and building these buildings, they tried to, they had the idea of the Italian villa. So they kept the tower, and then they modified it. They made very narrow buildings to, accommodate for the population. And that's what you see here. So it's a very interesting house. We have another group of ladies in this city that people don't hear too much about. We call them the Waller ladies or the Waller women, or whatever you want to call them. This is a group of Victorians. These are very pretty. They have a theme, though. They're also called the Four Seasons. You've got winter, fall is over here, and I can't quite tell. It's probably spring and summer is probably here and here. And one of them has a tower. It's a turret at Queen Anne. They're on Waller Street if anyone's interested in the, let me show you. I don't have the list for them. But yeah, let me show you some pictures
Donna?
of them. Uh-huh.
There are two questions.
Sure. You got a question?
First one is from Ellen. What are the rules regarding updates? The dark house that was kept as an homage to the Painted Ladies looks very altered, almost not recognizable.
For which house?
The dark house.
Oh, the dark house.
Yeah.
Well, the dark house is, I guess you could still call it a painted lady. Well, the dark house is just a different style. That's that Italianate villa. And it just has dark painting on it. I guess that's what makes it,
Donna, I think she's referring to that one that was kind of a navy blue that you said was.
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah.
Yeah,
because it has that turret. It had that bay window there.
Was that a new built house? I mean,
that's
okay.
Yeah,
So
that looks like it was completely rebuilt, that one. Probably something happened. There might have been a fire or something happened.
That was
you
what
know.
wasn't clear because I couldn't imagine that you could alter a real
Oh,
Victorian.
no,
to
no.
that
Yeah,
degree.
you can't. In fact, we'll talk about moving these things because we just moved one. Do you remember? I don't know if anyone saw it in the news.
Do you
They
live
just-
in Do you live in San Francisco?
Yeah, I do live in San
Okay,
Francisco.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So
There is another
Yeah.
question.
Go
Is
ahead.
there a space between the buildings?
Sometimes there isn't. Sometimes there's really not that much space. Sometimes the buildings are right up against each other. Like here's an example. In this neighborhood here, you can see how close these are right up against each other. There's no space. I want to show you the Waller women. Here we go. Let me click in here.
I also had a question about the lighting in those buildings, and that because they're right on top of each other, it looks like the only lighting that they're getting would be, say, like the parlor room,
Yep.
and solarium or something, and that it seems like it would be very, very dark in there.
Yes, it is. It's very dark. You're right, because you don't have any, like for instance, this house here, there's no side windows, so you're going to rely on the light coming in from the front. And on the back, some of these will have like small porch, possibly. They'll have it like fire exit. So there'll be stairs on the back of these houses for fire exit. Then they might have just this little porch, a little deck that you could sit out, and probably a backyard, small backyard. So this is the Waller women. Just to show you what these houses look like. This is winter. You can see the snowflake. Isn't it cute? Winter, spring, summer, and fall.
Yeah, Donna. Chris is saying, could we see the back?
Oh, you want to see the back of these? Let's see if we can get them. Let me go back here. Let's see if we can see the back. Let me get the satellite in, and we can see what they look like. I think it's right here. Oh, Four Season House is right here. So here they are. One of them has a tower. Remember the turret I was mentioning? So you can see the backyards. So they've got a little yard. It's going to take a little bit to, come into focus. But you can see they have a small yard. They've got the fire escapes, little deck. So they'll have a little yard there. So they'll get not too much light, though. You can see the windows are not too big in the back. But yeah, lighting is important. You're not going to have too much. And some have done little skylights, because I've gone to open houses, and you'll sometimes see houses, as long as they're not a famous Victorian, but people will put skylights on the top floor, sometimes on the roof. You'll see modifications done to the houses. But yeah, that's what it looks like. Just some trees. People will do different things in their backyard.
Donna, that top floor, since it's such a peaked roof, are those attics or are those actually livable spaces?
And some
There aren't
houses,
there don't seem to be very many gables on them.
some houses, there won't be anything up there. Some houses, they may have done a modification and gone into the roof and finished it off, but they're they're going to be very steep and not usable, and they'll become very hot.
Yeah,
those type
I
of
noticed
things.
like
Yeah,
over here they've got some gables in that kind of opens up, but
right. Yeah. So it really depends on what they do. All right.
Okay,
So
Donna, there is
Mhm.
another question.
Yep.
Frank is asking, have any modern day builders built new homes in San Francisco to replicate the Victorians?
oh yeah, they do it all the time. They try to when they, and if you're in a neighborhood where literally every house on the street is a Victorian, right? They're all those little Italianates that all line up in a row. And you're going to go build a new house. They're going to want you to build something that's going to look close to what's around it. And they do. They tend to do that. because
was the case of
it'll
that navy blue
stick
house.
out. What?
That was the case. That was the case of that navy blue house.
Exactly. Something probably happened there. And then they just put up something that would complement the neighborhood and not stick out, which I think people appreciate it when you do that.
Okay, another question.
Mhm.
What used to be in the houses lower levels before garages were built?
Some of them they're on a hill. There's nothing actually below. Because it was built on a little hill and they just put the house right on top, no basement, nothing. And so when they have to put a garage in, it's very expensive. It's about $100,000 to $200,000 to put a garage in a Victorian, because they have to prop up the entire house. They have to secure the hill so there's no slippage. They've got to finish off the bottom part. They have to actually make that foundation in there, and then put the garage in. So it can be a big deal to put it in on one of
Yeah,
those
one more
houses.
question.
Mhm.
Are there any basements?
Normally they didn't have a basement in the Victorian time because they moved these houses. Before there were pipes and wires, they would just up, and I'm going to show you a slide on how they moved houses around in the city, but they would just pick them up and move them because they were all made of wood. They were light. They would just move them. It wasn't until they started, having garages, then they started building, of course, the foundations now today, because of earthquakes, they all have, full foundations. So they will have something on the garage level. They don't plop them on top of hills anymore like they used to. This is an octagon house here, 1861. There were 5 octagons built in San Francisco. I believe this is the only one left. The reason they had this shape back then was because it was believed by the architect who did this that anyone that lived in an octagon house would live longer. So that this is a Victorian style. They started building these octagon houses. Oh, now this is another famous house in San Francisco. This was built in 1886. This is a museum. You can go and visit this. This is the Haas Lilienthal house. It was built to house residents, Jewish immigrants that were coming into the city. Today it's a museum. It's, of course, a very, very big Queen Anne, turreted Queen Anne. I'll show you what this one looks like. There we go. Now this is really quite the place here. Just to show you some of the interior of this house. This is the bay window in the front. You can look at the stained glass. All the
What's
woodwork.
interesting, and I guess it's the style, is that as dark as they are, they then make them even darker by painting them with dark walls.
I
So
know.
man, if your power goes out, you're
You're in the dark. They had a train set in there, I guess. This shows you one of the rooms. Now the Victorians didn't have bathrooms when they were originally built, right? They used outhouses because this is the 1800s. This would have been a room that would have been altered to become a bathroom down the road, as there was pipes and plumbing and everything put in. That's why they could move the Victorians so easily. They could just lift them and take them away because there was, you didn't have the plumbing and everything. There's an old stove. They tried to keep this one pretty authentic. And then they have the plans here. Does anybody know what this is?
isn't it a coffee urn or it?
Yeah,
It's an urn.
it's for coffee.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You have a dollhouse there. It's kind of odd. Oh, office there. They had some old pictures in there, of course, in San Francisco.
Are these pictures you took on a house tour?
No, these are off of Google. Old clock. But yeah, you can come here and take tours in this house. So it's quite a house. And come in. I guess they've got some pretty good. They serve you some snacks and stuff. This is the Abner Phelps house. Now, this is not really a Victorian,
No.
but it's a colonial. But it has some significance because it's considered the oldest house in San Francisco. It was constructed by Abner Phelps and his wife in 1850. Now, remember, 1848 was the gold rush. So this one here, it's on the National Register of Historical Places, was put on in 1979. Very old house.
Question.
Uh-huh.
What is the electric bills like in San Francisco?
Well, the heating is miserable in these houses. they have these forced air heat systems, which it's fine when it's on. The minute you shut it off, it just goes instantly cold. The houses absolutely cannot hold any heat. So you either just get used to being cold all the time, or you have a very high heating bill. And in the summertime, we don't have normally very hot weather at all. It's very cold actually in the summertime in San Francisco. So we don't have any air conditioning. So you don't have any AC usually. So it gets a little hot in the September, October. We have moments when it's about, in the 90s and it gets really uncomfortable.
Oh. Donna, that gray house on the far left that would be an example of a new house.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, exactly. It's a perfect example of a new house. And they kind of built it in the style of, they gave a little peek, kind of like in a Queen Anne look a little bit just to fit it in. So they try to, stay in with what's going on. This is the Walker. Huh?
You couldn't afford to build one today with all the handwork and trim.
Oh, no. Yeah. This type of work would be hard to do, to find anyone who would know how to do it. So this is the Walker House. This was built in 1879. It's a nice example of the Italianate style with the overhang eaves, the brackets, the bay windows. It's altered. It does have a garage. A lot of these Victorians are altered because of the, people want to have garages. This is the Sarah Mish house. Now, this is another one that we were talking about earlier. This is the stick Eastlake style. I'll show you a little bit more of this house.
Yeah, Donna.
Mm-hmm.
Few more questions.
Sure.
About how many of these homes remain in existence today in San Francisco?
Oh, they still have thousands of Victorians. You mean for Victorians? Yeah, a lot are still here. Because fortunately on the western and south side of the city, they did not have the fires from the earthquake. It was really just the downtown. So what was left are the family homes that were built by the builders. They weren't a lot of these. That's why some of these are smaller, because they were considered row houses. So this is the Sarah Mish house. This was built in 1885. This is a nice example. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. We're talking about the Eastlake style. Look at all the ornamentation on this house. So there were kits. You could buy a kit, stick all this stuff to your house, and it would be considered an Eastlake. And this
Go
ahead.
If I might interject, there are actually companies that replicate these details. I don't know if they call them Victorian details or whatever, but they are available for modern contractors. My husband was a contractor.
Oh, great.
Some of these things I have actually seen in their catalogs. They
Yeah.
are not in wood anymore. They're from a mold,
Mhm.
and they're like some kind of styrofoam, hardened styrofoam.
Oh, really?
product.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's
Okay.
very interesting. I actually have some in the interior
Yeah.
of this house right now.
Great.
So that's just a little tidbit that,
That's great to know. Yeah. Now these were done, of course, these are all done wood, and these
Yeah.
were done on lathes and jigsaws. And yep. So that's interesting that still continues.
Donna, the maintenance on these looks incredible. How often how often do they need to be painted?
We're by the
I guess it-
ocean.
I guess it.
I don't know. I would imagine they do have to do touch-ups probably probably every 10 years, I would think at least. They're not like this house is not
the
that.
weather
Huh?
pretty kind to them. Is the weather pretty kind to them out there?
San Francisco, the average temperature year round is 65 degrees. That's our average. So, half the time we're above, half the time we're below. I mean, it's pretty temperate. I would say we don't go below usually 40 degrees, and we normally stay below 80.
Is there, I'm also curious because is there much in the way of, well, I guess a pollution, pollen, the kind of stuff that we're just keeping them clean is hard.
Yeah, because you got a lot of traffic. It is the city. You do have cars driving, and they get, they have, I would imagine you have to power wash these a lot.
Okay.
They probably have someone come by every year and power wash probably to keep the brilliant colors. You would have to, because you're in a city. You've got cars driving by. Here's the nice, it's a nice colorful Victorian. This one's in the Mission District.
Now, is there, I assume from these colors, there is not a review board that okays the colors. You can kind of do whatever you want, obviously.
This one, I don't think this one's an historical one. This is just your average family Italianate that was built. So these people, here they would have probably no restrictions, and they just painted what they like. You do get some really interesting color combinations, I must say.
Looks
some
like
people-
Barbie's house.
Yeah, some people got a little too crazy on their color combinations. So this is the Inn in San Francisco. This is a very plain colored place. You can stay here. It's actually not too bad. People have looked up the prices. It's not outrageous. And this Victorian was built in 1872. Let me show you the inn. You can see a little bit of this house.
Okay, Donna.
Yep.
2 more questions. One
Uh-huh.
is, I see fireplaces inside, but no chimneys on the roof.
There is a little towards the back of the roof. You'll see a small chimney. They're not real big chimneys. They have these little tiny ones. They're not massive or anything like that.
And one is, when did building restrictions came into play?
Oh, you mean for Victorians?
I don't know.
I think they've been around probably, I would say in the past recent years, because a lot of these only made it to the historical registers in the 60s and 70s. So probably that's when the restrictions came in. Just to show you a little bit of this inn. Yeah, just so you can see the inside of some of these houses. Now, I don't like this bathtub. It looks very dangerous.
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
You need a
I don't know.
step ladder to get into it.
I know. I'm like, my God, they have a beautiful view though on their deck. And this is an example of using the space you have, having a deck on top of the house. You can look out, they got a little background area. You can see the view of all the city, all the different, you can look around, you can see all these Victorians, look at them all. They're just everywhere. A modern fireplace. So they have some modernization. Now this is a lovely room. Look at the woodwork here. you know, in the house here. And you can see how the lighting is. It is a little shadowy inside when you look at this here. Not too many lights, but you'll get a lot of light from those bay windows though. But at certain times of the day, That's just to show you a little bit of that one. Here's a nice example. This is on Cap Street. There's 15 stick-style Victorians right in a row. Now, these two here, you notice they look a little more modern, right? They look like they've had some updates. And you can see how they've kind of made them fit in with the other houses nearby. And this is just a whole row. So this is very common to come into San Francisco in the older neighborhoods. You drive down and this is what you see. You just see one Victorian after the other. These have been, except for these new ones here. These other ones, they've been here since the 1880s, 1870s. These are a set of unaltered. These are on Shotwell. There's the shingle style. Remember I mentioned earlier they did some shingle style on some of these. This one has had some alterations. You can see the eaves have been, they probably had something done here. It was modernized compared to the ones next to it are the old houses. And they don't have any garages, so they're considered unaltered. Now this little house is called the Boston House. When they were building all the houses, everyone was coming in from all over the world. They shipped some houses from back east. So this went around the Horn because there was no Panama Canal or anything like this. So this was 1854, and it was sent here from New England on a ship. They shipped a whole bunch of houses, these prefab houses that could be assembled quickly. So this is an example of, that happening. And then, of course, now let's talk about moving Victorians, because this is a history. Yeah.
For some reason, my laptop shut down and I missed a little bit. But on
okay.
those ones that you said were moved from New England around,
mm-hmm.
is that because they were kits and that it was easier to make
yep.
them
back
there?
yep.
So it was actually still cheaper to ship them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you think about that, there was no Panama Canal. They had to go all the way around.
Yeah.
But yeah, these were.
A ship would bring in a whole bunch of houses that were
exactly.
Kits.
They would come in with a whole bunch of them and they would just put them up.
They came as kits.
Yep.
They weren't. Okay.
Yeah. It's like everyone had an idea of how to build a house. It's like we have all these people coming in really fast. Thousands and thousands of people coming in, and everyone had an idea. Hey, I'm going to build this. Hey, I'm going to do this. It's just, you had a mixture. Now, some of those houses, of course, were small,
right?
And they have since been replaced in a lot of the city. So
because the proproperty's too valuable.
Exactly. Yeah.
But
they wanted a bigger place too.
It also shows you how expensive it would be to mill the lumber and find the workers to build a house out there at that time.
Oh yeah, anywhere.
Everyone was focused on looking for gold, I guess.
Oh yeah, I got to get the gold. So about a month or so, we moved to Victorian. This is a picture of it. There was a block that had become empty, and they wanted to build some housing. And one thing standing in the way was this Victorian. So they moved it. Moved it down the street. And I think there's another picture of it. Let's see if I can find it. Oh, here they are placing it in. So they moved the Victorian and put it in, found it another lot so that they can do the building that they want to do. But the funny thing with San Francisco is we have a history of moving Victorians. In fact, Mark Twain lived here, and he actually wrote to the editor of the newspaper. And he complained about it. Because for days he had a Victorian that was sitting at the bottom of the hill blocking the intersection, just sitting there. So, these houses were built with wood, even though they were massive, they were light, and they just, they used horses. They would have a pulley system. The horses would go around in a circle, and it looked like this really looks like a bad idea about to unfold, because they're going to go down a hill,
Jeez,
right?
Rana?
Yeah.
how many horses were lost in that?
I'm wondering how many houses just slid right into other houses. I mean, it's like house bowling,
Exactly, and take the horses with you.
I mean, but what's funny? Some Victorians in the city have moved 5 times in their history. So, I mean, it's not uncommon to find out that a house has been moved a few times. In 1900, they had 19 Victorian moving companies. Just to give you an idea how common this was. I mean,
Rana?
that's a lot of companies to
Well,
be moving.
Well, Donna, in fairness, this is really a good example for what pulleys and
Yes.
counterweights and levers,
Mhm.
in
fact,
Rana?
can do.
In fact, it's so good that even though the car and trucks have been invented at a certain point, they still used horses because the horses were able to step over the cables. So they did this method for a long time, even with motorized vehicles being around. So I think that was kind of interesting. Go ahead. Is there a question?
Yeah. Chris is asking, did they have any Sears kit homes? Sears starting selling their kits in 1908.
What was that? Seals?
Sears.
Oh,
You know, the
Sears kits.
kit.
Oh, probably. I mean, I would imagine. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Sears. Yeah, I've never heard of it, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. How much does it cost to move that Victorian they moved last month? Cost $300. I think it was $350,000 to move it. So it's a lot of money. So, anyways, now let's do a little. I'm going to just do a little fun thing here. Since we know a lot now about houses, we'll do a little quiz. Name that house style.
It's classic revival.
Yep.
Is that a Foursquare?
Foursquare.
Yeah.
A Romanesque Tudor.
Yeah, the Tudor markings right here.
And the
Definitely.
Romanesque Tower
And the tower. Yep.
with a stone.
Oh, you better get this one.
Queen Anne. Mid-century modern.
Yeah.
Arts and crafts.
Arts and crafts.
Yeah. Oh,
Italianate.
yeah, right. We're talking about the tower. This is a real good example. You see how in San Francisco, they just compressed everything and, compressed it, the style, but they still kept the style.
Remudding.
Everybody likes that one. Yeah, it's very good. All right. How about this one? Let's do this quiz.
Queen Anne.
Yeah, Queen Anne. Yep.
It's
What's this one? This one's kind of a weird question.
just an interior, so it's. Is that your ranch? Well,
Yeah, you're right. It is ranch. All right. What's this one?
Georgian colonial.
Yeah.
Ranch.
Ranch, yeah.
oh, I thought, okay.
Oh, just the Brady Bunch.
Split level.
All right, this
No, not
one.
that one.
Is that known as a bungalow?
No, that's a Georgian.
No, that's not Georgian colonial. That's
Bungalow.
I think it's a bungalow.
I think it's
Bungalow.
bungalow.
Yep, bungalow. Can't fool you guys. Here we go. What kind of house? There we go. The
There we
American
go,
Gothic.
Gothic revival.
Yep. That's it, right? The Gothic, the
Yeah.
peak.
Plus the name of the painting is Gothic American.
Yeah, that's true.
Queen Anne. Because it's not Greek revival and it's not Georgian colonial. It's got to be Queen Anne's the only thing that's left, although I wouldn't call it Queen Anne. I'd call
Yeah.
that's more.
Anyone? Yeah, Greek revival.
How is that Greek?
Early
revival?
1800s.
That's Greek revival, but the previous one.
It's kind of hard with public buildings, though, to figure those out. Now this one,
No, bungalow.
bungalow, yeah. All right, and this,
Greek revival.
right. Monticello.
Neo-Palladian.
Very good. Good job. That's the end of our tour today. I hope you guys enjoyed this tour.
Yeah. Donna, how long have you lived in San Francisco?
Oh boy, I moved here about 87, I want to say. It's been a while. I was very young.
I had another question I wanted to ask you. You mentioned it earlier on, and I wasn't sure if you were going to cover it later. And that is, I remember the painted. I'm a child of I was in college in the 60s, in the 70s. So I remember when the Painted Ladies book came out. In fact, I got a copy of it.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. But I was, of course, for a long time, Victorians were just all white, just painted all white, and everyone kind of my generation assumed that's what they were. And it wasn't until some research was done that they were very colorful. And so in the 70s, they started repainting them.
Right.
Now, and then you mentioned, so is it kind of a mix between the fact that they were, and then some of the more stuff in the 70s is more sort of this idea of 70s coloring, or historically is the 4 to 16 colors historically correct?
Well, in the 1800s, when these houses were built, yes, some of them were very colorful, and then some weren't. It was a mix. I guess it depended on who did it.
Okay.
But then in the 60s, the psychedelic, it just, yeah. Then it became this thing. Oh, let's paint these things, and doll them up, I guess.
Well, the thing is that I know there weren't any color photographs, and there weren't any much. Well, how was the documentation? How did they historically realize what the colors were? Is it just from
I have a quote. Let me
paint
find
samples and research of when they start scraping the paint back?
Well, what they like, for instance, here's a quote I have. This is a newspaper critic from 1885. He said, "Red, yellow, chocolate, orange, everything that is loud is in fashion. If the upper stories are not of red or blue, they are painted up to uncouth panels of yellow and brown." So that tells me there were some gaudy colors.
Okay, so yeah. Well, it's easy to understand that at some point, for maintenance reason, to paint them all solid white.
Well, that might have happened. Some of these that were really gaudy, as time went on and people bought them, they probably said, "Oh my Lord, no," and they just started painting them white.
Oh yeah,
so
because I can remember when, like I said, when I was growing up in the 50s, Victorians were known as being all white. They were all white everywhere.
Yeah.
So that was obviously something of case of where just for maintenance people, and they looked pretty all white because they're kind of lacy looking.
And I think too, like your historical registers, they all started like in the 50s and 60s and 70s, all these, historical registers for houses. So that started a lot of the repainting too, is trying to bring back the colors.
But like I
Yeah.
said, I guess a lot of that was done from actual paint research, right? Where
Right.
the
Yeah.
archaeologists start finding out what the actual colors are. Okay.
Well, it sounds like just from that thing from 1885 that
Right.
anything goes. So
But Donna, was it white paint or was it whitewashed?
I don't know on that.
Whitewashed used to be paint with water in it
Right.
to make the paint go further.
hmm Yeah, I don't know. And I don't know.
I
Like
don't know,
the
to cover those dark colors, you'd have to have white paint.
Oof, yeah. I mean, if they have oranges and everything, boy, you need a lot of white paint to cover that up. Yeah. I mean, these houses are so old. They've had many, I'm sure if you ever could peel back all the different layers, a lot of these Victorians, even Victorians that are white today, they probably have a ton of different colors under there.
Well, what people don't realize is that back in the 1800s, the paint palettes aren't as pretty as you think because the pigments that they had to make paint were pretty garish. I mean,
Well, yeah, they don't have like you go now into Home Depot and you've got all these colors. They didn't have that. They didn't have that big of a choice.
well, plus there wasn't the ability to make really subtle colors.
hmm Yeah, that's right. That's probably why they have the god ugly orange. Yeah.
To ask you to go this again, but when I tried to connect, it got thrown out.
Oh, yeah. You can. This class will show up again. You can come back and join it.
Okay.
And,
Well, I was just wondering why they were called Painted Ladies.
Oh, well, it was because of the book in 1978. There was a book called Painted Ladies, talking about the Victorians, and after that, that name just kind of stuck. They just started calling them Painted Ladies.
Okay, thank you.
That's So it's kind of a fairly new term historically. I mean, they didn't call it back then, in the 1880s or something. It was just regular houses.
And I think it referred to the book was strictly to the San Francisco houses.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was just the book, and that they started just saying, yeah, I guess they are painted ladies.
Well, and that was the period by 1978 they had already restored many of
Exactly.
them back to these old colors.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that was kind of the beginning of the movement.
yeah, and there's so many of them. I mean, just in fact, I can show you another interesting picture here if you want to see it. I know we're going over a little bit. Sorry. It's just to show you another a row of houses.
We're enjoying this, Donna.
Oh, you're enjoying it? Okay. All right. I'll
Anyone
hang.
that has to leave can leave.
If anyone has to leave, I thank you for coming here today and for supporting Get Set Up. I'll just show you this just to show you another colorful picture I found like this.
Oh, yeah.
It's a nice little picture, huh? And I think I've got another one here. Oh, let me find the page here. This style here. You see these?
Yeah.
All in a row. So you'll see this. This is very, very common in San Francisco. Just all these colors. I mean, sometimes it stops you in your tracks. Sometimes you'll be driving down a street and you're like, whoa, what happened here? They really do pop out at you.
I assume you don't have one.
No, I don't live in a Victorian. I did live in one of the row houses though, because I live on the western side of the city and they have a pretty, it's that Italianate style, the older houses, and they are very narrow. I lived in an old house that you just walk up the stairs. They had 2 levels. There was a family that lived below me. And one thing that was cool about that house, like you walk in and you see a very long hallway. You have the bay windows in the front. What would be a dining room, but frequently it became another bedroom a lot of times. And then the kitchen would be in the back. But one cool feature that house had was this a lever at the front of the stairs that opened the front door. So it actually had to work. A lot of times the cable is snaps on these older houses, but the one I lived in, it still worked. And so you could open the front door just pulling the lever instead of walking all the way down the stairs. So that was kind of cool. But they have all these neat little, features. A little tiny, in the middle of the hallway, there was a cutaway where you could put where the old phones used to be, right? When they had the phones, that was in the hallway. And they had this little wooden seat that, would come down. So you could sit there and talk on the phone in the middle of the hallway. So that was still in there. So a lot of these features of the old houses, they just leave them. I mean, they just, as long as no one's broken it, it stays there in these houses. So it's kind of interesting to see, that part of history.
So the area in the San Francisco earthquake, the earthquake didn't destroy so much as the fires that started from the earthquake.
Yeah. Oh, someone's got a big picture here. What is that a picture of?
Up a house I grew up in, Sausalito. Is that a man?
Oh, looks like it.
Yeah.
Looks like Queen Anne
Okay.
The fires were pretty much downtown. And there were a lot of large Victorians, huge, massive Victorians down there.
Well,
So around Grant Park and all that, that's where it was destroyed.
Yeah.
And pretty much from Grant Park down to the Bayfront.
Yeah, which is a big area. It was quite a significant. I mean, everyone just literally ran for the hills and, ran out of downtown to the other neighborhoods to get away from it. So it definitely took out a lot of houses. I know on, Nob Hill, the famous Nob Hill. There was a big mansion up there, and I can't remember who owned it, but there was a real rich family, and they built this massive mansion, and there was this small Victorian that lived next to them, and they kept trying to get the guy to give up his land, and they built a 40-foot tall wall between him and his neighbor. And this Victorian was living in the shadow of this 40-foot tall wall. They never saw sun after that. And they had this huge battle. And then it ended up after 1906, that huge mansion, it all ended up burning in the fires after all that. But I just thought it was a unique story of just this big fight the neighbors were having. And
I'm curious, since you live in San Francisco, like the Sir Francis Drake and all the big old hotels that are down there on Grant Park, are those then all built after the earthquake? Or did they survive the fire?
Yeah, there were some buildings that did survive. I mean, a lot didn't, but if they had stone, if they were made of stone or something like that, they survived. It was the wooden stuff that got burned. But there were some pockets that definitely, didn't get it. It wasn't like it was a complete. It was bad, but there were some pockets that
Well, I was just curious about the age of those hotels.
I would have to look those up. I'm not too sure on that. Yeah. All right. Well, this has been a nice discussion today.
Well, if
Thank
we're
you
ever
so
out in
much.
San Francisco, we'll give you a call.
There you go. Yeah. If you look up the old pictures are really fascinating of San Francisco when you see downtown. Just if you can scrounge on the internet and look up some, you'll see some of these really massive, houses that were down there. All right, everyone. Well, it's been a pleasure having you here today. Thank you for supporting Get Set Up. We'll see you next time in other classes. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Donna.
Yeah.
Real quick. Since you live there, I'm curious because we see on the news, and I haven't been to San Francisco. I guess the last time I was out there would have been around 2008, 2009. But all these pictures that we're seeing of the tent cities and homeless and drug addicts, where is that? Because it just breaks my heart to see San Francisco.
Oh, it's not everywhere. It's
obviously
downtown. Yeah, it's not everywhere. No.
No, I mean,
it's just certain areas downtown, that type of thing. That's what you're seeing. Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, some people are showing like a loop of these just certain areas.
Well, I mean, obviously San Francisco is huge, especially when you look at the map.
Yeah. Well, and with the pandemic and everything, it's been kind of bad because, the downtown's been so deserted. So, that's probably why they're taking all the pictures down there. But,
I was just
yeah.
curious what part of town that was.
Oh yeah, it's downtown area. Yeah. Like where I live, it's,
Oh,
it's
no,
not-
I mean, yeah.
not, you're seeing the worst of the worst, let's just say.
Oh, well, yeah. But I mean,
Yeah,
having been,
definitely, yeah.
because downtown's the only place, when you visit, that's
Yeah. Yeah.
pretty much sort of Grant Park and the cable car lines and China
Right.
and the
Yeah.
Bayfront is where you go.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
if you kind of wonder if that has moved into those
Mhm.
areas, which would make it hard on the visitor.
Yeah, I mean, it's just this, it's a sad story. It's, we're not the only city. All cities go through this. I mean, every city has this problem. It's a drug problem, What can we say?
Okay.
Hopefully someone can solve it. That's all I got to say.
No, I just wanted a chance to talk to someone who actually lived there.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. You guys take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Donna.